So if we're going to become Buddhas, we need to understand the ultimate nature of reality and realize it directly without any conceptual appearances or any other kind of obscuration. In order to realize it directly, we have to first have a correct inferential understanding. And inference is a conceptual mind. So we have to understand, have a good understanding conceptually of what in the world emptiness is. Because if we don't, then if we just expect it's going to appear and that we'll recognize it when it does, that's kind of wishful thinking. So the ultimate nature of reality is always present, but we don't see it. And in order to see it, we have to understand something about what it is. And especially since this ultimate reality is a negative phenomena, in the sense that it is a negation of a false way of existence. So it's not an affirming or a positive phenomena, like the table is, where there's something that you show for it, but rather emptiness is the lack of something that has never existed and never will exist, that we are only realizing now. So reasoning is important to gain that understanding of emptiness. And in order to use reasoning, we have to understand how reasoning works. And so for that purpose, we're going to be going through Dan Perdue's book, The Course in Buddhist Reasoning and Debate. But our motivation for why we want to realize emptiness, why we're studying this text, is of crucial importance. Because we're not doing it to get credit at a university, to get good grades, to promote our career, to impress people with a lot of mumbo-jumbo, so that we look very erudite. No, we're really trying to understand this to generate the proper wisdom so that we can attain full awakening and attain full awakening for the benefit of all beings, not just for our own self, but because we feel very related to and connected with other beings. And we want to contribute to their well-being in the highest way possible, which is showing them the way out of cyclic existence. So for that reason, we're studying this topic tonight and for many months in the future. So we are starting a topic that most people haven't studied before, and we're using Dan Perdue's book, The Course in Buddhist Reasoning and Debate, which he kindly put together by extracting all the important points from the usual debating texts. And I really appreciate his doing this, because in the debating texts that we get, a lot of the debates have to do with Tibetan language and the play on words and the double meaning of words and so on. So they don't make, those particular debates are hard, don't make much sense in English. We'll probably find our own, that work in English. But he's really extracted the important points here. So I thought that basically what I do is read the book and then comment on it. But as Dan mentions very clearly in his introduction, is that people have to practice. So it's not a class where you can show up on Thursday without having reviewed what you learned the last Thursday. Yeah, it's a class where you're going to have to learn something and then practice it during the week and really try and integrate it. Yeah, because it's a much more active approach. In most classes, if you aren't prepared, you can just sit there and look interested and look like you're prepared, even though you don't have any idea what's going on until the teacher asks you a question. And then you're sufficiently embarrassed because you can't remember anything from the previous week. So this you don't have that kind of out with this book, with this class. And what you get out of it is going to depend on what you put into it. Okay? So, what's the purpose? Why are we, learning this? So it's like I was saying in our motivation, if we want to get out of cyclic existence, or if we want to attain full awakening to benefit all beings, we need to realize emptiness, because it's only that emptiness that will eradicate the afflictions and the other defilements from their root. Yeah, bodhicitta is wonderful, but it cannot eradicate defilements from the root. So we need to realize emptiness. Yeah. So emptiness is when we talk about different kinds of phenomena, we have evident, obscure, and very obscure phenomena. So evident phenomena are ones that most common beings can see with their senses. Slightly obscure phenomena are ones that we need reasoning to use. And very obscure phenomena, we need to depend on scriptural quotations. But even in depending on scriptural quotations, there are certain criteria that those scriptures have to meet. We just don't pull out a book and say, the book said it, so it's true. Okay, emptiness and subtle impermanence also, are in that second category of slightly obscure phenomena, which means that we can't see them with our senses. We can't see emptiness with our eyes, hear it, smell it, taste it, touch it. It's an object of the mental consciousness. And being obscure, slightly obscure, it means we have to depend on inferential cognizers to know it initially. Of course, we want to go beyond inferential cognizers to direct perception, but the way to get to that direct perception is through the inferential cognizers. So inference depends on reasoning, it depends on language, it depends on conception. Okay? Because if you think, okay, I'm going to realize emptiness and I'm going to sit there and wait for emptiness to appear to my mind, how are you going to know when it has appeared? If you have no clue what it is, then when your mind is blank, you could very well say, oh, that's emptiness. I'm not thinking about anything. But just not having an object in your mind does not mean you've realized emptiness. In fact, it is not indicative of wisdom. It just means that you're spaced out, you don't have an object in your mind. Okay? So, they say that emptiness, some people say that emptiness appears to the fundamental innate mind of clear light at the time of death. Okay. Other people say, they say in common beings it appears, but common beings don't realize it. Even though emptiness is there, it just goes by because you have no idea what it is. And other people say it doesn't even appear to that extremely subtle mind. So let alone with that, with that subtlest mind where it's going to be the easiest for it to appear, it's not going to appear to any of our gross consciousnesses. Yeah, like I said, even if it did, we wouldn't recognize it. So it's something we have to get at through reasoning. Yeah. So reasoning is the avenue to get at emptiness, and by getting at it in that way, then we combine that conceptual understanding with very deep states of concentration, and through doing that repeatedly, then we're able to remove the conceptual appearance, which is what appears when you have a conceptual mind, and then emptiness dawns directly to the mind. Okay, but we have to go through that path of inference first. Yeah. To get to the path of inference, we have to have a correct assumption. Okay, so correct assumption is a mind that has the right conclusion, but the reasons for it aren't very steady, and so somebody can probably give you other reasons and talk you out of it. Okay. So this, and then to get a correct conception, a correct assumption, we need to have doubt that is inclined towards that correct assumption. And to have that, first we need doubt, that's inclined toward the wrong conclusion, because that's the first thing that will get us out of our wrong consciousness. Because we start off with our wrong consciousness that is grasping at true existence. Yeah. And we don't even realize that's a wrong consciousness. So we start learning about what emptiness is. Then we have deluded doubt that's inclined towards the wrong conclusion, but it's better than an outright wrong consciousness that's grasping at true existence and thinks, yes, this is really the way things exist. Okay, and then from there we go to the doubt that's inclined towards the right conclusion. From there to correct assumption, yeah, and then, to inference, and then to direct perception. So reasoning, is very important in all of this, because when we have a wrong consciousness, regarding the nature of reality, and we think, yes, there's a creator God, yes, there's a soul, yes, there's a truly existent me, that a real me here. The only thing that's gonna jar us or try to get us out of that wrong conception is some kind of logical argument that is showing us the contradiction in the way we think. Okay, so those are usually consequences. Yeah, people were presented with, well, if you really believe this, then that should follow. But that is something that we clearly don't believe in. Okay, so they use these arguments to show us, well, if I really believed in that, then how could I say that? That doesn't make any sense. Okay, so that gets us to doubt, and then through using syllogisms, presenting the correct argument, when we understand the syllogism in a general way, oh yeah, that makes sense, I'm impermanent because I'm the product of causes. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. And so then we get to that correct assumption. Yeah. But that correct assumption is very intellectual. It's like we're just using, I'm impermanent. I'm a product of causes, my mom and my dad, my previous life. So, I'm impermanent. But inside, we don't really believe we're impermanent. We feel like there's a permanent self in there. So then we use more and more reasoning. We go deeper into that reasoning. That if I'm a product of causes, what does it really mean that I'm a product of causes? What does that mean? What does that feel like to be a product of causes? Yeah. It means that before I came into existence in this life, I didn't exist, as I am now. The continuity of my consciousness existed, but children didn't exist in this life, before all these causes came together. Yeah. Well, that's a little bit jarring because we feel like, oh yeah, I believe in rebirth, but I was still the same person in my last life. Yeah? You feel that? I was still the same person in my last life. I just changed bodies, but I'm the same. Yeah. Because in my past life, I must have thought in English. Because all my thinking is in English now. I can't imagine using any other language to think. Or even, at one point in my life I spoke Italian, even, Italian and English. But somehow there's language and there's this and that, and it's still all me. Okay. And then you have to really think about that some more. Yeah. If I'm made of causes, then those causes don't last forever. So I'm not going to last forever. And you go, what? I'm not going to last forever? Well, yes, sometime we're going to die. There's got to be a permanent me then. A real me before I existed and a real me after I die, because I always am. Okay. So we have to loosen all of this incredible grasping and wrong conceptions we have by, really thinking about the consequences, the results of our faulty reasoning, the unacceptable results of our faulty reasoning, and by meditating on syllogism so we can try and get a correct understanding through using good reasoning. Okay. And then to use reasoning, then we have to understand how to use it. And what is a syllogism and what is a consequence, and how do we relate objects to each other? Are there 4 points in common, 3 points in common? And here you come to learn the whole debating structure. Okay? So, Dan was saying to also, and so one of the big purposes that I've discovered in the debate studies I've done is that it really teaches you how to think clearly. Yeah. Because often we feel we think clearly, but we go to put it into words and we can't put it into words in a way that even makes sense to ourselves. Yeah. And so it really teaches you to think clearly and to be able to express your thoughts in words so that you can ask a question that somebody else can answer. You may have noticed sometimes in Dharma teachings, some people raise their hand and then they ask a question. The question is maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes long, and it's going here and there and up and down, and you're not quite sure what the person's getting at. Okay, what is it that they really want to know? Okay, when you learn debate, then it becomes clearer to you. What is it that you're trying to figure out, and what do you need to know in order to figure that out? Okay, so it really helps to sharpen your mind and to ask questions, and it gives you a structure to ask questions in, instead of just kind of going all over the place. It also gives us a structure to talk to ourselves in. A lot of our self-talk now, as you've probably discovered through your meditation practice, is putting yourself down, criticizing yourself, blaming other people, telling yourself how wonderful other people are and how much you need them and can't be separated from them, telling yourself how unfair things are, that somebody else got this opportunity and you did. If we look at our thoughts, our day-to-day thoughts, they're we speak in terms of our own internal quote logic, which is not very logical and leads us to misinterpret things and thus for afflictions to arise. Okay? So, these arguments aren't just so that we can have a correct inferential understanding of topics like subtle impermanence and emptiness, but it's also used to ask ourselves if, okay, there's an affliction in my mind. What is this affliction based on? Okay, for example, let's give some examples. Yeah. I walk into a room and I see two people talking in a low voice in a corner of the room. And my mind says, they're talking bad about me. And I'm mad. I get mad. Here are two people who I think are supposed to be my friends, who are talking softly, and I know they're talking about me. And then that is my reason for getting mad. Okay, you ever had that happen? Yeah? Okay. So, I know these people are talking about me. What is the reason that we use? Yeah? Probably because they're talking in soft voices. Yeah? And when we were a kid, I don't know about you, but I knew when my parents talked in soft voices, it was something that I should try and listen to because they didn't want me to hear it. Yeah? So that must, and so sometimes if they were talking in soft voices, it was different things they didn't want me to hear. But sometimes it was about me and something naughty I had done, and what are they going to do with this daughter, and blah, blah, blah. So, whenever I hear people talking in soft voices, I just think they must be talking about me. Why? Because once in a while when I was a kid, my parents used to talk about me in soft voices. Now, is that a good reason for being certain that they're talking about me? Is it? It's not a very good reason, but it seems like a good reason to us. Yeah, because we use further evidence. They're not only talking softly, but as soon as I come in, they stop talking. Ooh, that's the proof. Yeah, they're talking and they stop talking. Yeah. So anytime somebody stops talking when I come in a room, it means that they're talking bad about me. Is that true? Is that true? No, that's not true, is it? Then we say, but I know they're talking about me because I know those people very well. Okay. So because I know those people very well is supposed to be a logical reason for why for sure they're talking about me. Yeah. So every time I know somebody well, that means they're talking about me. Is that true? No. Yeah. Well, I know it. Then you have to say, well, how do you know that? Well, I just know it. I'm sorry. In reasoning studies, in debate, I just know it is not an acceptable reason. Because I just know a lot of things. Yeah. And what most of the things that I just know are opinions based on my self-centered thought. Yeah. Because two people could enter that room, and if both of them use the same arguments, they're talking softly, they stopped talking when I came in. I can tell by the look on their face to prove that they're talking about me. But two people entered in the room at the same time, and both of them drew that conclusion. And both of them think they're right. But those two people are only talking about one person. And we're all clinging on to, but it's me. Why do we cling on to, but it's me that they're talking about? Yeah. I just know they're talking about me. We never say, I just know that they're talking about her. Or I just know they're talking about him. Yeah. Our magical way of reading other people's minds to just know they're talking about us only applies when they're talking about us. It doesn't apply when they're talking about somebody else. Interesting, isn't that? Okay? So are you getting what I'm saying? That we can start to use reasoning to examine our own thoughts. Yeah. I heard many people tell me, oh, I'd really like to come to that retreat, but I can't because my child has extra homework, or my dog is sick, or, there's too many dishes in the sink and I'm stressed out, I have to stay home and wash them. Everybody has some reason why they can't come. And they firmly believe in that reason. My child has so much homework, I cannot come to the retreat. Okay? What's the reasoning behind that? Yeah. I need to help my child with their homework because I am indispensable. Yeah. My child cannot get their homework done by themselves. They cannot get their homework done if their other parent helps them, or if a sibling helps them, or if a friend helps them, or if a neighbor helps them. They can only get their homework done if I help them. That's why I can't come to the retreat, because I am indispensable, and my child is going to fail their grade, fourth grade, because I'm not there to help them with their homework. And if they fail fourth grade, they're never going to get into university, and they're not going to have a good career. Yeah? That is our reasoning. Okay. Is that correct reasoning? First of all, that they're never going to have a career, that they're never going to get into university if they don't do their homework? No, that's not true. How about but I'm the indispensable one. I'm the only one that can help my child with their homework. That true? There's nobody else among 7 billion people that can help them with their homework. Like maybe they can even think and do it themselves. What a wild idea. Have your child be responsible for their own homework. Okay? But do you see, this all becomes a reason why I can't go to the retreat. But the reason is totally bogus. It's out of self-importance. It has nothing to do with the needs of the child. Okay, you getting what I'm saying? Yeah? So, as we learn reasoning and start using it to look at our own mind, it's extremely helpful, for being able to see wrong conceptions and false thoughts and then put them down, because we realize they make absolutely no sense. Okay? So this is my experience anyway. I found it very, very helpful. Yeah. And then some of the topics, he explains some other background material in the book, like even being able to discern between conceptual and non-conceptual minds. Yeah. For me, I remember that completely changed my meditation practice. Yeah. Because before I never thought about what is a conceptual mind and what is a direct perceiver. And then I realized, okay, I would get certain sense data, and then, okay, that's a tree, or that's a house. But then I wouldn't see the tree or the house freshly. It always reminded me of something that I had seen before. And I began to notice that. Oh, that's the same kind of tree that I saw in such and such a condition. And then I remember the people I was with there, my mood, and how all of that influenced the tree. And I projected onto this tree. Or we do it. It's easier to see when you see people who remind you of other people you know. You know how that works? It's a totally different person, but they remind you of somebody else you know. And then all of a sudden, your opinion of that other person gets put on this new person. And we see this new person through that conceptual elaboration that we're putting on them, which is basically our opinion of the old person. And then we wonder why right away we like somebody or don't like them. Okay? And then you begin to, wow, this is all conceptual mind. I am not seeing anything freshly. I'm seeing everything in terms of some past experience. And that's really coloring everything and everybody and really leading me down along a lot of bad paths because I can't see things freshly. Okay. So, there our argument is, I know that person isn't nice because they remind me of so-and-so. Okay? Is that a good reason? I know that they're not nice because they look like so-and-so. What kind of reasoning is that besides stupid? Yeah. And yet, you see, we have this kind of logic going on in our minds all the time. We don't see it. When we start to learn debate and what makes a good argument, we begin to be able to see all our wrong arguments and then start to take them apart. And then that enables us to see things much more freshly. I think that's what they call Zen mind, beginner's mind. And it's really hard. Yeah? Okay, so this is some of the benefits from doing this. Okay, so to gain competence in debate, Dan says we need to verbalize. Okay? We need to put it into words and to talk and to move our mouth. Okay? And this is really, really helpful for, again, gaining mental clarity, because we have to come up with the idea, a cogent idea to present. Okay? It's kind of like, learning debate is kind of like NVC. Just as the way NVC gives you a structure to talk about things, this gives you a structure to talk about things and a structure to think. Okay? So in the same with NVC, your first thing is you have to make an observation. You have to do a feeling. Then you have to do a need. Yeah? So here, we need to be able to verbalize, what is the object I'm talking about? Yeah. What is the thing that I want to prove about it? What is the reason I'm using to prove that? Okay, so it gives us that structure. It helps us get clear. So you're all going to need at least one other, one debating partner, maybe two or something. So once we start getting into that material, to really practice it with each other. Okay, then he was saying for rational discourse, we need competence in the procedure. So we need to understand this whole structure. And when we understand, how do you form a syllogism? How do you check if the syllogism is correct? And all these kind of different topics. When we have an idea of the structure, then it becomes very second nature. And it becomes easy to express in ourselves in it. In the same way that, in NVC they say you need at first to, really study the structure of how to say things. But after a while, then it becomes second nature. Okay? But we need to understand the structure first. So we need that. Then in debate, you also need composure. Okay? Now, our debates will probably be much more docile than the ones that you see, especially when the monks debate. Okay? If you've been to any of the teachings in India this last year, no, the year before when I was there, then while we were waiting for His Holiness, they had some of the monks debating. They, and I've gone to watch them many times when I've been at the monasteries. They push each other, they shove each other, they insult each other and call each other names. Yeah, they throw one reason after another at somebody very quickly, and you have to learn to think quickly and to say something. You can't sit there and go, let me think about it. Because they say, blah, 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 and then you got to say yes, no, or whatever your answer is. You can't say, duh, I need to check it in my book. Yeah, you need to learn to think quickly. Yeah, so you need some composure for that. And especially when, because it's a very active thing. And you should see them really. They'll take somebody and go like that and push them away. It's like, my turn to debate, you get out of here. Yeah, and then they'll sit and, one guy's sitting down and they'll do it and they jump and scream at each other. And everybody is debating around, It's not like a nice, sweet conversation. Everybody's quiet and you listen. No, everybody's debating loud around each other, screaming at each other. Yeah. So you have to be able to focus on what your debate partner is saying and remain focused on that, even though there's all this other stuff going on. And even if they insult you, even if you make a wrong answer and you look like a fool, yeah, because when they win a debate, they're really, it's like, we got you, forget it, you blew it, you lost the debate. So it's a very ego-smashing thing. And they do that deliberately, yeah. And if perchance you are very good and you get a little bit uppity and a little bit arrogant in your debate, in class the next day, your teacher will grind you to the ground in front of everybody else. Why? Because you're a Dharma practitioner, and pride does not work with Dharma practitioners. Yeah, so you will see that. The teachers will grind them the next day. The other people in the class will ridicule them and make fun of them if they're getting arrogant. If they come and they're unprepared, and so they're just wasting everybody's time, the other students, again, will, insult them and do all sorts of things. So it makes you, the way I'm just telling you the bad stuff already, you're afraid. Because we have such sensitive little egos, even if we're wrong, nobody's supposed to notice it. And if they point something out, they should, like 3 prostrations and say, please excuse me. Yeah. But no, that's not the way they do it. If you're really a Dharma practitioner and you're not pulling your weight, they tell you right to your face in front of everybody. And that is very skillful, because if you are embarrassed enough in front of everybody else, you will get your act together. Yeah. Of course, Westerners, that doesn't work with. We just sit there and cry. Yeah. Oh, they insulted me. They shamed me in front of everybody. Everybody's always shaming me. I can't stand this. We get so emotional, even when people are trying to help us. Yeah. So, the debate is really, at least the way they do it in the Tibetan, is, you have to shed your ego in the process. Yeah. Okay. It's yeah. So you need composure, because you need to be able to think clearly when all this other stuff is going on. Okay? You can't sit there and go, duh. And you can't sit there and cry, And you can't sit there and go, oh, excuse me, I've got to go pee right now. None of that works. Okay, and then he also said, what you need is memory. So if you're going to, there's a certain amount of memorization that is required for doing debate, because we need to have a certain body of information at our fingertips. If we're using certain words, we need to know what the definitions of those words are. Yeah, we can't just use a word or make up our own definition of the word. Okay? So we have to memorize some of what those definitions are. The different categories of phenomena, we have to memorize some of those. So, there's material that we have to hold in mind in order to do the debate. Okay, then Dan suggested looking ahead to some of he suggested, what was it, chapter 23 and 25, just to glance ahead. Have you done that? Yeah? So you have some idea of where we're going? Yeah, you may not understand it. Yeah, but it gives you some idea of kind of how things are going. Yeah, so that can be helpful. Okay, then he said you have to have a debate partner, and then go through the material in the book in order. Okay, so even though he had us look ahead at a couple of chapters, yeah, that was just to get a glimpse to see where things are going, but we should stick to the order in which things are presented, okay, so that we're learning, in a structured way. And then we need practice, yeah. In order to really understand the reasonings and the debate and to gain proficiency, we need to practice. Yeah. So he points out that you will get as much from this course as you put into it. If you don't put anything much into it and you don't prepare, you're not going to get much out of it. And I must say, for us in particular, learning the reasonings will help tremendously when studying with Jeffrey. Yeah. If the present text we're using doesn't have the reasonings, but the previous one, when he kept referring us to read maps or the Two Truths books, so much reasoning in there. If you understand the debate structure, then you understand all those reasonings and what to look for and how those reasonings make a particular point and get us to the correct conclusion. Yeah, so it helps a lot when you're studying other material. Because I've seen this a lot because very often with Westerners, people they're learning Lam Rim, and so when it comes to emptiness, you just start with the Prasangika interpretation, and it's laid out in a Lam Rim way with all the conclusions like that. But you don't know the reasoning behind it, and you don't know the lower tenet systems and how they think and how to refute some of their views. So you don't really get it, what the Prasangikas are talking about. Yeah, because you just know the conclusion, but knowing the conclusion because somebody said it is very different than, well, these people say this, and that doesn't work because of this reasoning, and these people say this, and that isn't correct because of this. And then you see, all sorts of wrong views, and then that helps you to really refine in your mind what the correct view is. Yeah, in a way so that you're not just saying, oh yes, and the conclusion is nothing is inherently existent. Because it's so easy to say that, and we have no idea what it means. Okay? So this is really helpful for that, but we need the practice. Okay? He also recommends that people not get discouraged. Yeah, so remember, yeah, when you're studying Dharma, it's not like learning in regular school where you're expected to just remember stuff even though you don't understand it and then tell the teacher what they already know on a test. You know, here we're not trying to tell the teacher what they already know. We're trying to learn how to think correctly. Okay? And so it needs practice. And it's a new system of learning. Yeah? So just because something's new, we shouldn't be scared of it. Yeah? Lots of times we are. You know, there's some new way of looking at things. No, I want to hear that. You know, it shakes me too much. Or I'm too stupid. I can't learn a new way. Or it makes me feel uncomfortable to learn a new way to do things. You know, and you see that even in small things. Yeah? Even in small things like, you know, you're trying to, I don't know, do something in the forest. And then Venerable Losang comes and says, oh, don't hold your saw like that, or don't go at it like this. Do it this way. And, you know, and the mind instantly goes, oh, I must be wrong, you know, and he's telling me I'm wrong. And I'm so familiar with, you know, cutting the tree this way. I can't learn any different way. I don't want to hear it. You know? Have you ever seen yourself do that? With lots of things. You know, you're trying to learn E-tap. I don't want to learn E-tap. It's too complicated. Yeah? I want to learn how to sew. Yeah, I want to learn this. I don't want to learn that. You know? Before we've even tried. Okay? So we need to have some open-mindedness and some courage. Yeah. So that we don't get discouraged, you know. If we don't understand something at the very beginning, then we ask questions, then we practice, then we keep trying, you know. Shantideva says there's nothing that doesn't get easier with repetition, with practice. So, yeah, we have lots of practice being closed-minded. Yeah. Lots of practice being closed-minded. We should try practicing being open-minded. Okay. Then, some reasons how debate can help us. So it increases our confidence because we learn how to think clearly, so we gain more confidence. It increases our mental sharpness, our mental clarity. Yeah, so we don't sit there and like get so confused. You know, when you really study this stuff, then you know, your mental clarity does increase. Okay, and like I said, it gave me a whole new way to talk to myself, and a whole new way to look at my mind. Okay, so you can apply your competency with the debate reasoning. You can apply that in other areas of your life. Yeah. And then you can also, when you're talking to people, you can discern their false arguments. So if somebody's trying to pull the wool over your eyes, you can pick up on it. Because sometimes, you know, people are stringing us along and they're pulling the wool over our eyes and we just follow. Yeah, when we learn this, then it really makes us stop and think, well, you know, what this person is telling me, is this actually true? Or is it a bunch of Okay, so very helpful. Yeah. So that's basically a summary of his first chapter, or his introduction, I should say. No, it is chapter 1 and the introduction are the same thing. Okay, Then with chapter 2, I was just going to read and then comment, because in chapter 2 he starts talking about, well, it's called the human situation, and it helps us to understand why learning this material is helpful and why it's important. Because if we want to get out of samsara, then, this material is going to help. So this also puts it to us. Do I want to get out of samsara? Do I really want to get out of samsara? Yeah. Am I willing to exert the effort necessary to get out of samsara? Yeah. Or am I comfortable in all my illogical things, in all my crazy emotions, in all my stuff? It's so familiar, it's so comfortable. Yeah, I'd like to be able to change it a little bit, but not too much. Yeah. So do we really want to get out of samsara? Or do we just want to keep doing things the way we've been doing them? We have lots of habitual energy, don't we? Lots of it. Having been born as we have, we now face death. True or false? True. Nothing more is required to assure us that we shall die but that we have been born. Yeah? Cause of death, birth. Okay? And we better think deeply about that. Yeah, because that means not only are we going to die, but everybody we know is going to die. All the people that we're attached to are going to die. All the people we can't stand are going to die. Yeah. So we better get used to that. If all the people we can't stand are going to die, do you want them to die while you're still hating them? Do you want to die while you're still hating them? Yeah. If the people you're attached to are going to die, what's the use of your being attached to them? How does attachment benefit you? How does attachment benefit them? Then our mind goes, but if I'm not attached, I don't care about them. Well, by that logic, then it means the Buddha should have so much attachment towards every living being because he can't care without attachment. Then the Buddha would be the most attached individual, and Buddha would be the most afflicted individual. Okay? That doesn't make any sense. Of course we can care about people without being attached to them. Yeah? But what good is your attachment going to do them if you're going to die and if they're going to die? Because that separation is guaranteed. No way to get out of it. Yeah. Once a plant has sprouted, it is definite that in time that plant will die. Every structure we build will come down in time, including the one that we're just trying to build right now. Having met as we have assures us that we shall part. When you move into a new home, you can confidently put a sign on the refrigerator that says, "The day when you no longer live here is surely coming." If a mountain system rises up, though it may last for millions of years, in time it will wear away and be gone. Geologists estimate that the Appalachian mountain system that runs from northern Georgia up to Maine may be the oldest mountain system in the world, perhaps as old as 600 million years. The northern tip of this mountain system is found in the north of Scotland, and another part of it is now in Morocco in the west of Africa. You can imagine how long ago they were formed, these mountains, and how long it took the geological plates to drift so far apart, moving at approximately the rate that your fingernails grow. Okay, the geologists believe that formerly some of the mountains in this system were as much as 10 miles high, more than 4 miles taller than Mount Everest. And now, millions of years after they arose, none is more than a mile high. If in time even these great mountains wear away, what need is there to wonder about this frail body? The Tibetan Book of the Dead literature puts forth an assertion that we shall survive after the end of this life. That's not just the Tibetan Book of the Dead literature, it's Buddhism. These texts explain the process of dying, what life is like in the period in between after the end of this life and before the beginning of the next, and how we take rebirth. Thus they say there are no dead persons, there are only dying persons, and we are all dying persons. Because we usually think dead person, stop. Yeah. Actually, you're dying, and as soon as you leave this life, then you're in the bardo, you're in the process of dying from the bardo. You get a new life, then you start dying from that life. So we're all dying people. From the point of conception, we begin the process of death. Moment by moment, with every breath, we draw closer to death. When you finish reading this paragraph, you are closer to death than when you began it. When you walk out of this room, you are closer to death than when you entered it. Although these things are clearly accurate, they are difficult to bear in mind, and the implication of these truths humble us. Yeah, when you really think about it, it's very humbling, isn't it? I am not going to exist forever. And you know what? When I die, this whole universe is going to continue on. Imagine. And when I die, all my friends and relatives are going to continue living. Amazing. Because we feel when we die, we are so important that the whole world is going to fall apart because they miss us. Yeah? All of our family and friends are going to cease in their footsteps. And they're never going to be able to eat again. They're never going to be able to talk again. They're never going to be able to smile again because we are dead. And we are no longer here. And aren't we the purpose of their lives? We are so necessary and important in their lives. They cannot live without us. The way we think, isn't it? Yeah? Actually, everybody's going to do fine without us. Quite miraculously, the world will exist when we're dead. Everybody will adjust. They'll go on in their lives. Imagine that. Yeah. Another one of our wrong conceptions shot down. Okay? Moreover, they imply that our time is precious and fleeting, And we must do what we wish to do now while there is still time. So we need to know what is important in our life and what is not important, and do what is important now, because we have no idea how long we'll live. No idea. So it doesn't make much sense, Oh, I'm really busy, I have to do this, I have to do that, I have to do that. And then I will practice Dharma after, we all have our thing. Yeah. I will practice Dharma after all my responsibilities are done. I will practice Dharma after I finish my PhD dissertation. I will practice Dharma after I make my first million. I will practice Dharma after my children grow up. I will practice Dharma after my parents pass away. I will practice Dharma, after my cat learns to tap dance. Yeah, we always have, we're looking for the best condition. It goes off. It went off by itself. Right when I'm talking that the time of death is impermanent, uncertain. And this went off. It's working now. It's fine. Yeah, it just turned off when I was talking about the uncertain time of death. Yeah. You think that's a coincidence? I know it did it deliberately. I just know. Yeah. Clearly, the thought of the Tibetan texts that talk about death is that this life within us cannot be stamped out. There is no choice but to live. And ultimately, if you want peace and happiness, there is no choice but to try to figure out life. Okay? So if we're always dying and there are no dead people, then we have no choice about whether we live or die, because you never really die. Okay? One of the inmates that I work with, horrible upbringing, what happened to him. And, it was very troubling. And he told me that for a long time he contemplated suicide. And when he met the Dharma and he heard about rebirth, that when you die you get reborn, then he realized that suicide would not stop his problems. So he just abandoned that idea. It doesn't work. You kill yourself, you keep on living, just in another body, and probably in a more painful situation because of the state of your mind when you suicided. Especially from the point of view of a system that asserts a round of rebirth, every day and every life is like the movie Groundhog Day, in which the world-weary character played by Bill Murray lives and relives February 2nd over and over again until he manages to do what has to be done. To do what has to be done, that's the language in the sutras for attaining liberation. You did what has to be done. Yeah, rebirth, the cycle of rebirth has stopped. Yeah. Okay, so for whatever reason, we all want life, and we act to preserve our lives. Some say it is because of fear of the unknown that lies beyond this life. Some say it is because of attachment to this life. We have what we have and we want to keep it. Some find a biological explanation for why we seek to preserve our lives. Everything about us is laid out for the preservation of our lives. But we want to live only if we can live with some measure of peace, free of suffering. No one wants to live in constant and horrible misery. Thus we hope to live, but beyond that, we hope to live free of suffering. Yeah. Then the question comes, do we create the causes for suffering, or do we create the causes for happiness? Do we even know what those causes are? Still, as I say, having been born as we have, we now face death. And on top of that, before we die, we will face difficulties. It's true, isn't it? Yeah, do we expect to go through this life without any problems? I do. Yeah? I expect, today I should have no more problems. Tomorrow I should not have any problems. Day after not. I don't think I should have problems for the whole rest of my life. Yeah, do you think that way? Yeah, I should not have problems. My life should be problem-free. And if problems come, then I have a right to complain, because they should not happen. So it is not a question of whether or not we will die, nor is it a question of whether or not we will suffer. Both of them are going to come our way. Thus, given the reality of suffering and death, is there anything we can do? The first impulse is to flee. Yeah, can I reserve a ticket to Mars? Yeah, or to the moon, or somewhere, else. Okay. We wonder whether or not it might be possible to avoid death and suffering. Naturally, we wonder whether or not there is any way to get out of this fix. The constant vulnerability to death and suffering frustrates our wish to live in peace. Doesn't it? Even if everything is fine in this moment, it is difficult to be at peace. Why? Because we know we're not free of suffering. And we know that this moment may be okay, but problems are coming our way. And even if they aren't the problems of getting what we don't like, or not getting what we do like, or being separated from what we like, we all know that for sure the problems of aging, sickness, and death are coming. Okay? But, yeah, we all expect, tomorrow I should not have any problems. When I think about tomorrow, I know I'm going to have problems. All I have to do is look what I have to do tomorrow. What's on my book, and I look what I have to, what's in my calendar next week. Yeah, I'm going to have problems. Yeah. They start when I wake up. At this point, we cannot stop death, and we cannot prevent difficulties from coming our way. So what do we have? What can we control? It is a matter of how we respond. Okay? It's a matter of how we respond. It's not a matter of controlling our environment so we get what we want. It's a matter of how we respond to what comes our way. Everyone knows the quote, well, maybe not everyone, he said it, not me, knows the quote attributed to Albert Einstein, that insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Okay. Our responses to life events are often quite consistent. We do the same things over and over again, and we usually get the same results. Thus, our propensities just keep piling up, and often we only gain more difficulties. But if every day is like Groundhog Day, then every day is a chance to get smart, to get it right. As hard as it may be, when difficulties arise, we have a choice of whether to respond with anger or with fortitude. No matter what comes our way, we have a choice of how to respond. We have a choice of what our emotional response is going to be. We have a choice of how we describe the situation to ourselves. There is not an external objective reality out there that is impinging itself on us such that we have no choice but to feel whatever we feel, or we have no choice but to think whatever we think, or we have no choice but to have the emotion that we have. Yeah, there is not an objective world out there. Yeah, we are co-creating our experience. So there's a lot of choices in there, but we are so much creatures of habit that we just abdicate our choices. And we go with what we've always done. Somebody criticizes me, I get angry. Or somebody criticizes me, I cry. I've always done that. It's never worked very well. Once in a while it does. If I'm angry, I threaten somebody. Maybe they'll do what I want out of fear. I cry. Maybe it makes them feel bad, so they stop bugging me. But in the end, what does it do? Well, we keep doing it. As hard as it may be, when difficulties arise, we have a choice of whether to respond with anger or with fortitude. Even if you don't believe in a round of rebirth and that an action of anger can give you a long, miserable life in hell, the intelligent will consider whether or not anger will benefit them in this difficult situation. In the film The Godfather, Michael Corleone says, "Don't hate your enemies, it clouds your judgment." And it's true, when our mind is filled with anger, we cannot think clearly. Our judgment is clouded. We make very bad decisions. Okay. Against the backdrop of inescapable death and certain suffering, we all want happiness and don't want suffering. It is a constant longing that drives us morning, noon, and night, and sometimes we even gain a measure of it. We fill the roads going north, south, east, and west because we want happiness and we don't want suffering. I want to go somewhere. Why in the world do your mother and father do what they do? Because they want happiness and they don't want suffering. Why are your friends doing what they do? Because they want happiness and they don't want suffering. Why do people lie, cheat, steal, and even kill? Because they want happiness and don't want suffering. Why does Congress try to pass a completely ridiculous health care bill that makes health care worse in this country? Because they're trying to be happy and avoid suffering. Okay? No matter what, we are always seeking to find happiness and avoid suffering. Sometimes we are drawn to what we think will make us happy, or at least alleviate our suffering, even when it is the worst possible thing for us. Don't we? Yeah? Especially, if you have a substance abuse problem, some other kind of addiction, you're addicted to gambling, to shopping, to music, to dancing. We have a lot of addictions that are socially acceptable and a lot of addictions that are not socially acceptable. Regardless, why are we following these addictions even if they don't work in the long term for us? We're trying to be happy. We don't know any other way. Yeah. Why does, the woman who's getting beaten by her husband go back to him? He's trying to be happy and avoid suffering. Yeah. Why are North Korea and the U.S. throwing threats at each other when there's actually nothing at the basis of the quarrel? There's actually nothing. I mean, they're not fighting over land. They're not fighting over wealth. They're not fighting over trade. There's nothing to fight over. Why are they throwing more and more outrageous accusations and threats at each other? Because they're trying to be happy and not suffer. Okay. Now we look and go, boy, they are so stupid. But we should look at what we do in our attempt to be happy and not suffer. Yeah? We do totally stupid things trying to be happy and not suffer. Yeah? And things that work against our own happiness we will do. It's more than just crazy human hijinks. Indeed, the impulse to seek happiness and avoid suffering seems to be universal for all conscious beings. Why do the squirrels hop about in the yard? Because they want happiness and don't want suffering. Why does the spider weave a web? Because they want happiness and don't want suffering. Why do chickens cross the road? Because they want happiness and they don't want suffering. Now we know why the chicken crossed to the other side of the road. Okay? No matter what, that game is always in play. Look into others' eyes and you will know the truth of this. Look at your own eyes in the mirror. Okay? Let's just pause here. Any questions or comments?
Venerable, you described two kind of extreme situations for how debate could go. The Tibetan version with screaming and shoving and pushing, and then the Western possible version of crying and wimping out. What was your experience like? And how could it go here at Sravasti Abbey?
I learned debate by reading it. I didn't have the thing of having a partner. And, the way the Dharma was taught, it went through the logical reasonings, but we didn't do it. Yeah. But my teacher did when we were acting uppity or overly confident or whatever, he would. Well, good for you.
Well, also a comment, just in reading this section of this chapter, completely convinced me that Dan Perdue knows what he's talking about, and I trust this text. Just from that, it's so beautiful and pointed. But my question, and I've always had this about, I think that sometimes I think, oh yes, I have some correct assumption because I kind of lean towards the philosophy that I've studied for a long time, but in truth, I don't actually live like I have those correct assumptions. Mm-hmm. So, how deep, when we're looking at going from doubt, even tending towards the correct conclusion and then correct assumption, for sure I don't have any kind of inference, but how deep are we talking when we say, I have some doubt about that's moving towards the correct assumption about how things exist? What level of understanding? When we talk about these different steps, even though it's quite intellectual, and I would say that, I'll speak for myself only, I'm quite committed to this being the way things are. I want to study it and I want to know it. But the way I live, is not that.
Right. So we have correct consumption. We don't have an inferential cognizer.
So that is correct assumption.
Yeah, it's a form of correct, but correct assumption is not just one thing. It goes from here to there. It goes from the moment you stop having a a doubt inclined to the right conclusion to the moment before you have an inference. That's a big span. Okay, so correct assumption covers a lot of territory there.
I just wanted to make a comment. I love this section of the book, and it makes me want to appreciate, like they do at the beginning of the book, the greatness of the author. Because I really feel like when they told us, Guy, I guess it was, who told us the email that he sent out right before he died, he said to all of his Dharma friends, Dan Perdue did, that your life is like a golden bag, a bag full of gold that's just draining out. He was aware that he, of what he could have done with his life, and he just, I don't know, I really felt like there was something, I feel something special about this part of the book and his understanding of the meaning of life. So I wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah, and he died in his 60s. He wasn't that old.
Well, how does one cut this constant seeing something, seeing the light, and being reminded of something else, and it's just constant and not seeing things in a fresh way?
As they are. I think first being aware that that's what's happening. Yeah, to be aware, I'm looking at this and it's making me think about that or reminding me of that. And it's just, okay, I caught myself thinking, no, let's look at this for what it is. Yeah, so you just have to, it's, this mental factor of introspective awareness that monitors your mind and what's going on in it. And then, when you're off, to cut it.
Someone online has made a request. She said that she'd love a separate talk on Groundhog Day at some point because she always considered it a Buddhist movie.
No, I never saw the movie. Yeah, we have precepts about not watching entertainment. I've never seen the movie. So, sorry.